Katie Simpson joins us now from Washington. Katie?
The trade war is now on, Adrienne. Donald Trump's tariffs are in effect. After months of threats and shifting demands, the U.S. president followed through. These sweeping and devastating tariffs upend one of the most productive trading relationships in the world, punishing America's closest economic partners.
Thank you very much.
It's been called an attack, a betrayal, the abandoning of an ally. Donald Trump confirming his tariff plan on Canada, the justification swinging wildly. First, saying it's about creating U.S. auto jobs.
Very importantly, tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start. So they're going to have a tariff. So what they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States.
Then Trump backtracked, saying it's really about fentanyl. Too much enters the U.S. Canada, Mexico, and China are to blame, and he's not open to further negotiations.
No room left for Mexico or for Canada. No, the tariffs, they're all set. They go into effect tomorrow.
There had been hope a worst-case scenario could have been avoided. With suggestions hours earlier, Trump was still open to lower tariff rates.
He's got to decide how he wants to play it, and that's the key to the president's advisors. We are around telling him all the details, but then he's going to decide this afternoon, and tomorrow we're going to put out those tariffs.
This is just the first blow in Trump's trade war. Additional 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum start March 12th. Broader tariffs on all U.S. trading partners start April 2nd. Those details still need to be announced. The tariffs sparking blowback from Democrats in the Senate.
Families will suffer. Businesses will suffer. You said you'd bring down costs on day one, Donald Trump. Yet here, 1 month in, you're doing something that would raise costs significantly.
But Trump is set on this America First agenda, an existential Groundhog Day of repeating deadlines, mixed messaging, and a sense of dread for Canada. This is the new normal.
So I don't see the president wavering on any of this, because he knows in order to get to a world in which America is strong and prosperous with real wages going up and factory jobs, this is the path.
The next big question for Trump: how much pain is he willing to see Americans endure? Once the cost of living starts to go up, will that sway him to back off? Once the auto sector grinds to a halt, will that be enough? Or will he bulldoze through in his pursuit of his agenda?
So, Katie, you live in D.C., you know the day-to-day there. Is it your sense that Americans are ready for this?
Anyone that deals directly with imports, there is a real sense of fear and panic, because it's the American companies that pay for the tariffs. Overall, though, in this moment when so much is changing in the U.S., with the mass firings at the federal government, Trump's blow-up with the Ukrainian president, tariffs can get lost in the shuffle of a very busy news cycle.
They can indeed. All right, Katie Simpson in Washington tonight. Thank you, Katie. So as promised, Ottawa is hitting back with its own retaliatory tariffs tonight, and the Prime Minister will address the country in the morning. As Catherine Cullen explains, it caps off a day of confusion and mixed signals from Washington.
I know that a lot of Canadians are asking themselves what is going on right now.
Despite all Canadian efforts to fend off tariffs, officials spent much of the day waiting to find out what was next.
As of this moment, I have no news to report on that front.
There's been no word like today, no?
Not to my knowledge, no.
We don't know what's coming tomorrow. I'm not even sure if President Trump knows what's coming tomorrow.
Then, mid-afternoon, the president was explicit.
Very importantly, tomorrow tariffs.
Leaving many Canadians, including federal ministers, shaking their heads.
The decision that's been announced, I think, is deeply regrettable and will have a very significant impact.
We know that this is an existential threat to us, and there are thousands of jobs in Canada at stake.
The federal government had a multi-phase plan for counter-tariffs ready the last time Trump leveled this threat. Melanie Joly says that pushback is still ready to go.
We've done the work. We are ready should the U.S. decide to launch their trade war. We are ready with $155 billion worth of tariffs.
If I'm hearing you correctly, you are ready, sir, to go to war, to go to a trade war with the...
Ontario's premier seethed on U.S. cable TV about how he might push back, from cutting off critical mineral supplies to no longer buying U.S. alcohol and more.
I'm going after absolutely everything, and I don't want to. We keep the lights on to 1.5 million homes and manufacturing in New York, in Michigan, and in Minnesota. If he wants to destroy our economy and our families, I will shut down the electricity.
Canadians in the auto sector have warned these tariffs could lead to jobs being hurt in the U.S. Almost 1 million Americans could face temporary layoffs, says one representative.
Go ahead, put the tariffs on, and then explain to people in Michigan and Alabama and Tennessee and Texas why they're home from work.
And it appears that this time, Adrienne, there's no last-minute phone call between Trump and Trudeau to stop these tariffs.
But Catherine, the Prime Minister did in a way respond tonight, right, in a statement?
That's right. He laid out the work that Canada has done to address Trump's concerns about the border. For instance, that $1.3 billion border plan, a new fentanyl czar, and more. Then he outlined Canada's pushback. He said, "Let me be unequivocally clear. There is no justification for these actions," adding, "Canada will not let this unjustified decision go unanswered." The Prime Minister says the country is responding immediately with counter tariffs. The first tranche on $30 billion worth of U.S. goods. Those come into effect immediately, with another $125 billion worth coming up after consultations with industry, and the potential for several non-tariff measures to come in as well. In one of his few remaining days as Prime Minister, Adrienne, Justin Trudeau will address Canadians about this serious economic threat Tuesday morning.
All right, Catherine Cullen in Ottawa, thank you.
Thank you.
Just moments after Trump's announcement this afternoon, stock markets were hit by a significant sell-off. The S&P 500 lost nearly 1.8%, its worst day this year. The Dow Jones down about 1.5%, wiping out most of the gains seen since Donald Trump's election win. Here in Canada, the TSX also down. Here's senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong. For the story behind those numbers, what on earth do we read into this, Peter?
It's interesting, right? Because until now, at least, investors had largely shrugged off this threat of tariffs. You know, through the campaign, the night Donald Trump won, even as he quite repeatedly said he was going to impose the biggest trade barriers we've seen in like 100 years, markets mostly ignored him. And, you know, all of those deadlines came and went. Businesses and consumers and politicians are all pulling out their hair trying to figure out what this was going to mean and how they should react. Markets were largely unmoved, you know, at least in part, Adrienne, because investors simply didn't believe him. They know the president often has more bluster than bite. In 2016, remember, he said he was going to tear up NAFTA. And in the end, yeah, they made some changes on the margins. But as a result of that, trade actually increased 30% in trilateral trade between Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. So they saw this as a tactic. They saw this as a way to negotiate more concessions. And they kind of said, you know, call us when he actually does something. So today, as Trump spoke in the White House, investors finally saw reason to act, and they acted. And the stock sold off pretty sharply.
And if you zoom out, what specifically are the markets fearing here? Is it uncertainty? Is it just the pain this is going to inflict?
It's all of that, right? We talk a lot about how bad this will be for the Canadian economy, but this can be bad for the American economy as well. You know, the American Tax Foundation has said these sweeping tariffs could be like imposing a $130 billion tax on American households. It says the move would shrink American incomes by 1.2%. The price of gasoline is now projected to rise like 40 cents per gallon in northeastern states. Remember, when tariffs were imposed on steel and aluminum, tens of thousands of jobs were lost. Washington had to offer like a $30 billion bailout to industries. That's bad for business, it's bad for the economy, and eventually markets had to price it in.
Okay, Peter Armstrong in Washington tonight. Thank you.
You bet.